attendance online. Hello. Let's move on to agenda approval. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda?
No, but I don't think we're recording it.
No, are we recording it, Jimmy?
Says it's recording.
Yep.
Okay.
Hope so, because the big head voice is bothering me. All right. I have no changes or questions on the agenda. Do you have any? All right. Joe, are you okay?
I can hear you now.
You'll have to tell me if he does a thumbs up. I'm not gonna. All right, assume so. So we'll move on.
Oh,
With
can you
that,
hear me?
we have room for public comments. Are there any individuals in the present who wish to make comment for the committee on items not currently on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on. Approval of the minutes dated August 5th, 2025. Chair reviewed, has no questions or alterations. Are you okay with them? Joe, you still online, and can we do a sound check with you?
Can you hear me now? I take that as a no.
His name showing on the screen, but
Name showing on the stream, and he's showing that he is unmuted.
Let me try it this way. Can you hear me this
There
one?
we go. User error, not infrastructure. All right. All right, you okay with the minutes as presented?
Yes.
All right. Hearing no objections, we'll move on with the minutes as presented as approved. All right, we'll move on to consideration of claims report dated September 8th, 2025. Chairs received no emails from other council members for questions, clarifications, and I have none for myself. Do you have any, Councilor Christian and Councilor Johnson? Are you okay?
Yes.
Any objections to moving forward with the claims report as presented?
Nope.
All right, we'll move forward with the claims report as presented as approved. Move that on to council. Let's move on to Agenda Bill 25081, resolution authorizing a 0.1% sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes.
All right, so thank you very much, Chair, and good evening to you, council members. As well, I've got a presentation for us tonight, just to go over the proposed agenda bills. So bear with me as I share my screen. Start from the beginning. Well,
Drew, can I do are you gonna? Never mind, you got it.
okay, cool. All right, so once again, good evening to you, council. Tonight, we're going to discuss the public safety enhancement sales tax, which has been incorporated into this agenda bill 25-081. This would include a resolution authorizing a 0.1% sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes. Council may recall from the Washington State session this year that the state legislature had approved funding for really criminal justice purposes. And in essence, what they accomplished through Gross Substitute House Bill 2015 is two funding mechanisms for criminal justice purposes. One would be a 3-year, $100 million grant program for hiring, retaining, and training new police officers and co-responders. And they also issued a councilmanic or approved a councilmanic 0.1% local option sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes as well. Just to get into the definitions a little bit, I've mentioned criminal justice purposes quite a bit here already. It's defined as activities that substantially assist the criminal justice system, which would include the police department here, and we do have our police chief with us tonight, but also includes circumstances where ancillary benefit to the civil justice behavioral health system occurs, such as the following. And so there's a list that I'm going to read through here. Domestic violence services, such as those provided by domestic violence programs, community advocates, and legal advocates. Staffing adequate public defenders to provide appropriate defense for individuals, diversion programs, reentry work for inmates, local government programs that have a reasonable relationship to reducing the number of people interacting with the criminal justice system, including but not limited to reducing homelessness or improving behavioral health, community placement for juvenile offenders, as well as community outreaches and assistance programs, alternative response programs, and mental health crisis responses as well. So in addition to potentially using this funding to support the police department, it can also be used in different ways as well that really benefit the criminal justice system overall. In terms of the conditions, and what's really critical to this is to understand that for the 0.1% sales and use tax to take effect, the city must qualify for the grant. In order to qualify for the grant, the Snoqualmie Police Department will have to provide the following to the Criminal Justice Training Center, or otherwise known as CJTC. The following, and I'm going to read through this list as well. In essence, we have to have established policies that comply with state law, as well as the Attorney General Office's guidance for law enforcement practices related to citizenship status. We needed to have participated in CJTC trainings related to behavioral health and first aid, establish policies on de-escalation and use of force that incorporate the AGO's guidance on duty to intervene and use of police dogs, complied with state law on use of force data reporting, particularly once the state program is operational, establish policies related to civil protection orders and the court-ordered surrender of firearms. At least 25% of our officers must have completed the CJTC Crisis Intervention Team training. In addition to that, 100% completion by required officers for CJTC trainings on sexual assault and gender-based violence. We need to have received funds from an authorized public safety or criminal justice sales tax, which indeed, given the voters' approval last year, we are currently receiving that. And then lastly, the last two here right now, police chief, sheriff, or marshal who is CJTC certified and has no felony convictions or gross misdemeanor convictions for moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, or corruption. And then lastly, establish policies for supervising agency volunteers, any insignia worn by volunteers, and for restricting those volunteers from enforcing criminal laws other than for special event traffic and parking, using force, carrying weapons, or using dogs for purposes besides search and rescue. Now, all this has been quite a mouthful just to share with council here, but we do have our police chief here that can speak to the fact that we've met quite a few of these conditions. As a result of this itself, in addition to meeting those grant qualifications, the city must also provide the CJTC with the following, which includes a detailed staffing plan, which must include the number of co-response teams, administrative staff, commissioned and specially commissioned officers, and officers on flexible schedules, an average 911 response rate, and an average case rate closure or average case closure rate as well. So there's a lot of information that we would have to provide to CJTC, which the police chief and his team at the police department have been putting together so that we can submit that documentation to CJTC. Once the documentation has been submitted, the CJTC will have 45 days to review and notify the city of any outstanding deficiencies. Once we understand what, if any, deficiencies we will have, we would potentially, or we would correct those deficiencies. And if we happen to approve this resolution, if council happens to approve this resolution, and if there are no outstanding deficiencies that exist after that review from CJTC, the city would send the resolution to the Department of Revenue for them to start basically accruing that tax on our behalf. In terms of sales tax rate changes, the effective date of a tax change would be, according to DOR, either January 1st, April 1st, or July 1st. And the date in which we'd have to notify DOR regarding those dates would be October the 17th, January the 15th, or April the 17th as well. So consequently, I think we're hoping to get this in place and get CJTC's at least approval by, if the sooner that we potentially do it, the better. But hopefully at the earliest at this point, probably January 15th would be our likely date in which we would submit a notice to DOR, who would then make the effective date of the tax change for April the 1st. We likely, as a result of a 2-month lag, and when we would receive those revenues, start receiving those revenues in June of 2026. Just to go over the impact a little bit, in terms of the estimated ongoing revenue with a proposed January 1, 2026 date, which is a little sooner than what I just said, we would generate an estimated $243,000 for 2026, which would increase to $302,000 for 2027. And you would see that increase as time progresses, largely at the rate of inflation is what we're estimating here. Please note that I'm estimating ongoing revenue. So this isn't ongoing plus one-time revenue from construction activities and so on. This is just really, it's the most stable portion of our sales tax revenue that we would be devoting to, say, the police department or other criminal justice needs within the city. All retail sales consumers, including non-resident visitors, would pay the tax. And the estimated local resales tax resulting from one household living in the city of Snoqualmie is approximately $28,000 right now, $28,500. And that's when you include the retail leakage rate and things like that as well. Therefore, the estimated burden of this tax on a citizen within in this year, 2025, is approximately $28.50. And unlike the recently approved, voter-approved criminal justice sales tax, there is no sharing requirement. So it's not split between the county or the city. You will note that the county recently took the 0.1% public safety enhancement sales tax as well, which means that these taxes are stackable on top of each other. So the county could also impose the same sort of criminal justice sales tax at the same time that we're doing so. And instead of sharing just 0.1%, it could be potentially 0.2%. So with that said, in terms of the grant program, I just want to go over this a little bit as well. In terms of the eligible uses, if we do choose to receive those funds from the grant program, we could use those funds to hire new officers or co-responders, including the expense to recruit and retain. Could you potentially use those grant funds to fund the use of force de-escalation, crisis intervention, and trauma-informed trainings for officers to comply with CJTC's required trainings. In addition to that, we could also use those grant funds for other efforts, including emergency management planning, environmental hazard mitigation, security personnel, community outreach and assistance programs, alternative response programs, and mental health crisis responses as well. In terms of the limitations from the grant itself, the grant would cover 75% of salaries and benefits for up to 3 years. And in terms of how they prioritize who to fund and who not to fund, top funding priority would go to grant applicants that are starting new co-response programs or already have a co-response program in place. And so that's just some of the information on the grant program itself. Right now, what we've got before you today is a resolution approving this 0.1% public safety sales tax, which would be dependent upon getting certification from CJTC that we qualify for the grant. And as a result of that, this resolution would be turned over to the Department of Revenue, who would then start collecting the sales tax on behalf of the city at the appropriate time. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Good, yes.
So I do have a question on the grant program for specifically limitations. Do you know whether we would be qualifying as already having a co-response program because we had a mental health professional who was working with the police department, but since we no longer have her, would we, for example, be able to potentially qualify under the grant program to hire a new one or say the same one? Like, I'm just trying to suss out what the implications would be, if any, or at this point in time, I understand that the CJTC is also trying to come up with additional guidance and things like that. So I know it's kind of a moving target.
So the easy answer to that
Mhm.
would be, we have a co-responder program in place because that position is frozen.
Okay.
At the moment. So we would have to unfreeze it and move forward that way. So we do, because we do have a program, we are a coexisting one.
And we could use, I'm still struggling. This is not a grant. There's some
Well, there's,
politically correct speech here to try to shy. Well, no, it's allowing us to tax our citizens and calling it a grant. It stretches my interpretation of a grant, but whatever.
There's two
There's
parts
two
of
different
it.
things.
Parts.
There's the tax and then there's the grant that is a dedicated $100 million that we can apply to these things. The tax is separate,
Okay.
but you have to apply for the tax in order to do the grant.
You have to
Or-
qualify for the grant.
You have to
do
qualify for the
tax.
grant to do the
Are there
tax before.
Any restrictions on what the tax can be used for?
Well, it's got to be used for criminal justice purposes. So that is the overall eligible use of this. We kind of ran through that list. In essence, activities that substantially assist the criminal justice system. That includes police officer work and so on. So as a result, if we were to contact AWC, they would interpret it as funding available for police officers and other sorts of needs within the police department itself. It includes, the list here of circumstances where ancillary benefit to the civil justice and behavioral health system occurs, and we've kind of ran through that list in front of council tonight. But in essence, the goal would be to apply this funding to the police department overall. And I think as we understand from the governor and the intention of his efforts this past legislative session, that the goal was to increase or at least support the police departments that we have so that we can staff our department fully and make sure that our citizens are protected adequately.
Which we are currently doing already. So my question is, what are we gonna use this $250,000 for? I understand the menu you just put out for me. I want to know what we intend to order with the $250,000 per year escalated that we're going to get.
So one of the big unknowns is there's new regulations around the public defender services. They have now limited the public defender, sorry. They've limited the public defender's caseload to a very small amount, meaning that we're gonna have to hire a bunch more public defenders to carry the existing caseload. That is one unknown. They're gonna get those costs to us eventually. The goal of this was to get our ducks in a row so that we're not reactive. We are ready. I'm not necessarily trying to be proactive, just trying to be ready when those costs start rolling in. Also, as a result of losing the North Bend contract, we're gonna need to address dispatching for Snoqualmie individually now. Prior, we were sharing dispatching costs. So we are now in the process of talking to different dispatching groups and soliciting bids to figure out where that's gonna go. That's another unknown cost. So there are unknown costs in the future that we would be looking to apply this money to offset the increases.
You had you were twitching. You had comment.
And one of the questions that I had too is specifically about public defenders, because it has been a topic that's recently been up in terms of like the SCA, the Sound Cities Association, because all of the cities are kind of having this big panic because not only are there a limited number of folks and attorneys who take on this type of work right now, but it's not really an area of the law that law students are excited to get into
Right.
because it doesn't typically pay well. And so just looking at how significant the reductions will be in caseloads, like it will have a big impact. And, you know, we are going to have to figure out a way to fund that while also funding prosecution and other things to make sure that, you know, crimes are still being prosecuted here. And we don't know what it's going to look like in the other jurisdictions nearby, as well as the county too, as things go forward. So I think that is concerning to me. I think that it is necessary that they reduce those caseloads, but
Yeah.
we're definitely going to see a financial impact on that.
Well,
Thank you.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I was a little bit unclear. I heard that we meet a number of them, but we don't meet all of them. Maybe you did specify and I just missed it. Like, how close are we to actually getting there?
So
To
we're,
being able to qualify?
so we're actually in the process of reviewing all of our policies and everything. I can tell you, right now I have 2 of our policies that are in review with our city attorney, just to verify. I believe they meet based on everything we've read. I'm just having a second set of eyes verify that. And then I have one policy that I'm currently working on that is under the Keep Washington Working Act. That one, most agencies are still kind of behind on that one because that's a newer change to the law. So that's just a matter of kind of basically updating that policy, which really doesn't take that long. And then I run it through our city attorney to make sure that it meets. Everything else we meet. We are over 25% on our 40-hour CIT requirement with a plan to be 100% compliant by the end of the year. We meet the de-escalation through CJTC and those trainings, first aid training, things like that, because we train for basically a tactical med treatment training should we get into an officer involved shooting, things like that. The de-escalation training is required every 3 years through what is called the patrol tactics class. Every officer every 3 years has to go through that, and every officer is kind of staggered. For instance, there's 3 of us going, or 4 of us going in December. So they just kind of stagger throughout the year. Of course, we meet the sales tax one from the implemented sales tax last year. And the use of force, our use of force policy is solid with what the Attorney General's put out. So right now, after a review of the 2 that are currently with Ms. Burke, and I'm working on the other one, which I hope to have that one done tomorrow to Centaur, if that helps answer those 10 requirements.
So it sounds like the intent is to qualify by the end of the year.
If everything works out and I get the final sign off from the city attorney, then we would be able to move forward with both and get all of our applications over to CJTC, hopefully before the end of the month.
Okay.
One thing we are waiting on is the website is live for that. However, the application portal is not. And then there's one other one that was in there, which is the use of force reporting.
Mhm.
That went live yesterday with the state. So every 30 days I have to report to the state. And it's either myself or Acting Captain Weiss who will be reporting that every 30 days. And that just went live yesterday per state law. So we will meet those requirements as it's already up and running and everybody's logged in.
And
Jim?
then one of my concerns was, I'd rather be at the front of the line than the back of the line of every jurisdiction in Washington. So that's why I asked to have this brought forward, and I've asked Gary to get the ducks in a row and get the applications in. So that there was no delay of 8 months while they're reviewing everybody else before they get to us.
Okay, sure.
So if I'm reading this right, the 3-year $100 million grant program, that would be $100 million that's from the state that's spread out across whomever applies and qualifies and receives the grant. And let's just pretend that there is a jurisdiction that waits for 2.5 years and then they submit. They might be out on the grant part, but they could still implement the sales tax, and the sales tax would go on in perpetuity, or does that also sunset in 3 years?
No, it's in perpetuity. There's no sunset clause.
Do we intend to submit under the grant program or solely under the tax program?
I would like to do both. The question becomes, and that'll be a question that I also take to public safety, is where our needs are. I've been looking at our mental health needs. I've been looking at officer needs. I've been looking at other things because obviously we have a lot of change, especially coming our way. So to date, for the city of Snoqualmie alone, we've had 54 crisis intervention calls or CIT calls. With both cities, we were pushing about 100. They kind of stay about the same. That work though carries a caseload because you're doing follow-up, things like that. So I'm assessing those needs as we look at it now. We've also talked about and talked with our Valley Defenders, our public defenders unit. They still have yet to figure out how exactly they're going to proceed under the new law. And based off of a rough number that I got today, we're averaging about $80,000 a year in services to them. We can expect that to go up a little bit over a course of time. So that's where the sales tax would come into play, as Mike was saying, to kind of offset some of that and eat up what is going to ultimately increase, because right now let's say they're carrying, I would want to say it's like a 200 caseload, it will drop to 100 or whatever the state law says it has to be, which means you have to have more attorneys to fight these cases. So I don't know what those numbers look like, and they haven't been able to give me a firm number. They're kind of planning on a gradual increase over the 5-year period that this law has to take full effect for them. So there's a lot of moving parts there, but I would like to apply for both because we could, utilize that money for anything from a new position to retention to additional trainings in CIT or de-escalation, things like that, because there's so many different avenues that we can take it. So I do plan on applying for both.
Okay. And if you apply for the grants, you'll take that to public safety and then bring that through.
Yes.
So what are we approving tonight? Is it just submit to qualify or submit to qualify, and if qualified, enact the tax?
What would you like to do? I would definitely like the first one.
Oh,
And I put forth the second one as an option, depending on what council wanted to do.
mine is submit to qualified. I'm not ready to enact the tax. Opinions?
I don't think it was talked about yet, the mental health specialist. That's a position that I've been a little bit concerned about. That is vacant, correct? And that at one point I thought was paid for by the state. Is that still the case?
No, that grant money ran out. So that's one of the, with the loss of the North Bend contract, that's one of the positions that we had to freeze.
Right.
And that's why I'm looking at that caseload to see if it's something that we can vitally maintain, whether that's they do a joint, I bring somebody back in and do that position for a mental health specialist and a co-responder and bring back our program fully. And then maybe include that into some of the domestic violence services and things like that, where they can provide additional help, additional resources and follow-up, because I have to have a certain amount of caseload to make that position vital for us and worth the dollar. So that's why I'm looking at those numbers. That's why we've been pulling those numbers and kind of monitoring where we're at. So it's a vital tool.
So that was just one of the positions. And I think that there are some other positions as well that that could become more challenging to support when we're now going to be half the force that we had before. So I think that's just something to consider.
Do you have an opinion on qualify or tax? Qualify or qualify and tax?
I mean, I think they should both go to council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe.
Please,
Yeah.
I have an agenda bill. I want to make clear what the agenda bill is.
At present, I feel like I am foreseeing the need, and given the support that the public has given to public safety in the past, I feel confident that the public would support us if we did go forward with the tax. But that said, we shouldn't, I don't think, put our thumb on the scale when we bring this to council as a committee. I think we should bring both options, just have the discussion there.
Okay, but I'm still looking for, if we were to get, again, $250,000 in the first year and escalate thereon, what are we going to spend it on?
Mhm.
Given there's some fuzziness on some of those things, you may have things below the line that says, if these drop out, here's other things that may come into vogue. But I don't want to tax unless I can definitely point to there's a need.
Okay.
And it needs to be more than anecdotal.
Okay.
Okay, sorry to be a stick in the mud. Joe, you had your hand up first.
So yeah, real quick on that. I do agree that we shouldn't just be like, well, there is need over here. Maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's $1 million. I don't know. I think that, yeah, we should have a better idea before we decide, yeah, we're going to implement the tax at this exact rate. Because maybe it's possible that we would be overtaxing. I don't know yet.
I don't know.
So I think that we should find that out. And then also, again, I hope you didn't already say this. Can the grant be spent on capital? Because if we spend the grant on personnel or other operations, then it's going to be gone, and then we lose that surface. So why we perpetuate something that's unsustainable?
Basically, that's it.
So this is what's eligible uses, which it would be hiring a new officer or co-responder, such as a mental health professional type, retaining. It can't be used for laterals. It has to be an entry-level officer, which also incurs the cost of sending that person to the academy, getting them up to speed on cost, things like that. So there's an expense there. Again, we get into the training, so I can use it to expand our de-escalation training, our trauma-based training, and all of that. And like I said, my goal is to send everybody to the 40-hour CIT course.
Mhm.
Part of that is, why would one officer have it and not all of the officers, or, one officer over another? Because we all deal with the same thing. A majority of our calls do involve crisis intervention.
So
And-
what I don't see on here, at least very clearly, is equipment or other
No.
sorts of capital expense. Okay,
I mean, I would suggest that the intention in this program was to add police officers because Washington State suffers from a low officer per capita rate
but the grant runs out.
in 3 years, which is potentially where the sales tax comes into play as a part of that equation overall. So then you
Yeah.
might flip that to
Mhm.
funded through that sales tax. So I think
Okay.
we want to, also part of this is to potentially co-determine what we might want to use these funds for, which I think part of this is to get council's input, just to see exactly what their interest is and participate in that process for how we could potentially allocate these funds moving forward.
Yeah, so I
I
think
will-
that probably goes into part of the planning for why do we need this, which I personally see the need. But being really clear and making sure that we know what that need is more precisely than what we do right now. And I think that's something to consider is the grant is a certain amount. It sounds like this is more like an operations expenditure.
Yeah,
So then how do we move from grant to a different revenue source?
potentially, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I would also suggest this is part of the sales tax conversation too, which, it's probably always amusing coming from the finance director when he repeats himself pretty consistently, but we do have those lines crossing in 2029 at this point. And so consequently, a new revenue source that the state legislature has put in front of us is certainly attracted to the finance department to push that curve out even further, especially when we know our revenues are going to come in usually at a lesser rate than our expenditures will over time. And those expenditures include things such as police officer salaries and benefits and stuff like that as well. So, obviously that's my hallmark, I guess, overall. And certainly these funds can be used in other ways other than just maybe supporting us in our ongoing expenditures over time. So,
And I'll add the things that we do know that are gonna increase is our public defense. We
Yep.
know that's gonna increase. We're almost at 100,000 a year. Plus we have a few months ago, we pushed through the agenda bill to add a public defender that used to not come out of our city's funds. So that's an additional expense there that this would help cover because that's a domestic violence issue there. So there are those added expenses that will increase because of what the state has ultimately done with the law and dividing up their caseload. The other side of that is we know this state is 51 out of 51 in officers per capita. So we are the lowest in the nation, and that is one of the reasons that this grant and these funds have been opened up because the state has gotten a lot of pressure on that.
But we, Snoqualmie,
Yes.
are not.
We're not at the lower end of it in comparison to cities such as Kent,
Yeah.
or Seattle.
Piece what other municipalities
Right.
inflicted upon themselves, in my opinion, is not justification for us. But okay.
But averagely per capita, we are less than other states per city, for each city. We're doing pretty good with the numbers that we've set. Are we where we should be? I would like to see a few more officers to make us where we should be. However, we're going through a troublesome time right now and we're figuring it out. So it's just one of those things that we do need to increase training and we need to offset stuff and be able to send people to these trainings and things like that. It's not cheap to send an officer to a 3-day class because I also have to backfill staffing. When I send 4 of us in December, 2 are admin, 2 are on the road. The 2 on the road have to be backfilled. My spot doesn't have to be backfilled because I have an acting captain that's going to be at the office. But the road is not that way because I have to make sure that the community's safe. So that's where a lot of this is going to come into play. I think moving forward under the circumstances with the added requirements that the state is also putting on us as a police department to meet these trainings that they keep throwing at us.
You would comment or?
Yeah, one is I did bring up the co-responder before you came in, because that was a point for me as well. If we could, I do think that a list of priorities for the police department for what they'd want to do with the funding would be really helpful to council. Also, I would love to see a co-responder come back. the mental health professional. I think that it was really beneficial to the community, and I remember at the time that it seemed like with the ability to follow up with cases, it did seem to decrease call volume, as I recall. If we have the data on that, that would also be helpful. I don't know how hard that is to dig out, but I remember at one point when I was doing a ride along, there were a few folks that were in particular having a lot of calls, and I think that some of that was helped. Any of that, I think if we can also take the burden from the police on having to respond as many times, we can have someone helping. I think that that would be beneficial too, especially as we're looking at what things are going to look like going forward, right? Because if we can help the people on the front end, then hopefully we don't have to respond the same way on the back end, right?
Yeah, if I had to guess, staff is probably going to come up with, or could come up with, needs that won't add very much to what we already desire to do, and that their revenue issues that this could help out with. So I'm guessing that that's what's going to happen, but we'll see what staff comes to us. What?
Also, emergency management planning would be wonderful too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple items
Yeah.
in there that are,
Would be really beneficial.
I mean,
to have.
the hiring officer is a one-time cost for a significant on-time expense. So we're gonna have to adjust for, other those are one-time with some duration before you have to refresh them.
Yeah.
That,
Retention
yeah,
would be-
we could go do. All right. I'm just looking for the list. Guys, it's on a regular basis. I say I'm on the council and they go, you politicians, all you do is figure out new taxes. Only half of those come from my older brother, but I get other ones, okay? So I just want to be able to point to something like, no, this is a community need.
Yep.
This is a mechanism for us to support that, and these are needs, they're not just wants or dreams or whatever, they're needs. So that's all I'm looking for. And then you got me. Okay,
Thank you.
good for this going to council and non-consent, so at least we can have
It's only a resolution. We could do as consent, right? Just kidding.
we'll have the discussion of how far we want to push it. All right, thank you. Thank you for not letting me beat my record of shortest F&A meeting. That's a good thing. All right, 2024 quarterly reports, discussion?
Good evening, committee.
There
Jana
she
Walker,
is.
Budget Manager. If you may recall from 2024, we said that we would be delaying our quarterly reports posting just because of our ERP. We were implementing that and we had some delayed financial internal reporting. So I'm happy to say that as of today, those 4 from 2024 are posted on the city's website. You can find those on the finance page under financial reports. So those are there for your perusal, and I would encourage you to look and just see how we've done. I'm not going to go into them. We kind of did that at the Q2 quarterly review for 2025. So I will just leave that for your perusal.
Thank you.
And then I just want to let you know that in 2025, we still have some of the same delays, but we're picking up some momentum, and we expect that the first quarter of 2025 will be posted before the end of the year. So that's our hope right now. And that's it by way of announcement.
All right, thank you. Next agenda item is another discussion item, King County Regional Opioid Abatement Council Amendment. Who's gonna speak to
Tina,
that?
are you taking that one? There she is.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep,
All right. Well, good evening, council members and chair. Thank you. The state attorney general's office negotiated a settlement agreement with multiple pharmaceutical companies that were involved in basically opioids and contributing to the opioid crisis in the country, which also affects King County and Snoqualmie. As a part of the settlement agreement that the state attorney general's office negotiated, each county has an opioid abatement council that's created. So, being in King County, we are a part of the King County Opioid Abatement Council. And so this King County Opioid Abatement Council, its main purpose is to ensure that all of the cities or agencies that are a part of it are spending funds as a part of the settlement that are in compliance with the settlements that the state that were negotiated. So in other words, the city receives the money. There's a process for spending the funds, and also the funds have to be spent on something that's related to the opioid crisis, such as addiction treatment or abatement or prevention of opioid addiction. You know, we can't go and spend it on a Ferrari, for example. It has to be related to the opioid crisis. As a part of the settlement, 10% of our settlement funds are then sent to King County, the King County Opioid Abatement Council. The current agreement reads that if King County spends less than the 10%, the following year, we get kind of like a credit for that amount. So, just let's say for 2025, it was $10,000, but King County Opioid Abatement Council only spent 8,000 of that. Next year, we would get like a $2,000 credit. The King County Opioid Abatement Council has proposed a change where cities that are a part of the King County Opioid Abatement Council would no longer get that credit. And a lot of cities are really concerned. A couple cities have raised concerns about this because it basically can potentially mean that more funding is going to the King County Opioid Abatement Council, and they are able to retain that money, and then it's not helping people that are, unfortunately suffering from, opioid addiction or preventing future opioid use and addiction. So I wanted to raise that to make sure that you're aware of that. And give you the opportunity to ask any questions. There are some options. We can provide feedback to the King County Opioid Abatement Council about our concerns. Additionally, another city has put forward and told other cities, they're encouraging advocacy for an audit of the King County Opioid Abatement Council in the future to, understand how they're spending these funds that each city is giving them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I think it's a good idea that, we have to tell them what we're spending the money on. They should be telling us what they're spending the money on. That's just a good thing. I necessarily wouldn't put audit term on it, but at least there's an accounting. I'm concerned that if they underspend that again, that money doesn't go back in the pool to help people in need. I have a contrary concern that it gets them in a spend it or lose it mode, but it's not necessarily that you get less budget next year. It's just that $2,000 you didn't spend last year gets thrown in the pool to actually do something, as opposed to administrative costs. So I'm unclear why King County, if they didn't spend the money, why shouldn't that money go back in the pool?
And I think that's a concern that a couple other cities have raised, and why they've reached out to fellow members of the King County Opioid Abatement Council municipalities to make sure that we're aware of this, to raise this issue.
So is there a new ILA insert eventually coming, or?
The King County Opioid Abatement Council, they've proposed an amendment to the ILA that's currently in existence. So the proposal that they've put forward is just an amendment. Due to the outreach that they received, they have said to pause any approval of their proposed amendment because they're going to take this feedback and review it. And so, I do think that if Snoqualmie wants to agree with what these other cities have said, that would be important feedback for us to provide to the King County Opioid Abatement Council.
I would just do feedback, if they're unspent funds in prior fiscal year, what's the logic under which those funds are not then put back in the pool to actually administer the services, not administer, but deliver the services versus administrative costs? So I give them that feedback, don't understand why they're requesting to retain that funds.
And that's a good question, and I don't know why King County has proposed that they get to keep the funds.
did you want the, any other comments or
No, I have the same concerns.
do you want this conversation at council or are you just happy with feedback from FNA that we don't understand the proposal, the reasoning for the proposal?
I mean, I think that's up to you all. If do you want it as the voice from FNA going to the King County Opioid Abatement Council, or would you like it to be the full council voice for when I provide the feedback to them?
Go ahead, Joe.
I mean, the rest of the council may disagree, but my hunch is that they would just say, we have the same questions FNA has. So I feel like we just don't really have enough to go on here. So I think essentially the response of, do we have questions?
Okay, let's do it this way. Let's, in essence, on the FNA portion of the agenda, put in a position statement of feedback on revisement to the opioid addiction ILA. And just at this time, do not see reason for retention of prior year funds at the King County level versus rolling into funds for next year for services. Can you write something up along those lines and make sure
Yeah.
I'm saying it correctly? I stumbled a bit, but you can smooth it out legally.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I can do that. So it's do not see reason for retention. Do you want it to include general opposition or just at this point not understanding?
Well, don't see reason for retention versus rolling it into services delivery
So
in
we're gonna have to
subsequent
need more
year.
An explanation for why, right?
Yeah, why?
Okay.
Is if,
Okay,
because maybe there's a good reason, in which case then maybe we shouldn't oppose it. So I feel like it's too early to.
yeah, let's have the conversation, but
opposition.
tell them at least where we are in the conversation. Go ahead, Mike.
So I believe the concern that other cities have is they want to roll it into the local service delivery rather than it remain at a regional level by not returning that money to the local area.
Right,
Yeah.
So, okay,
and service delivery is at local area. It's not at the regional council.
although I'll argue differently.
Well, and I'm worried that it gets held for service delivery at King County
Correct.
versus service delivery at King County and others. And it should be, everybody gets to participate in any of the underrun.
So this 10% cost actually is not for service delivery when it
Correct.
goes to the Opioid Abatement Council. It's more for the administrative like oversight costs. So when King County keeps it, the Opioid Abatement Council keeps it. It unfortunately doesn't even get to be used at the county level for services. It's more for the like administrative oversight of just ensuring compliance with the grant.
Understood, but
Okay.
If they don't use it for administrative purposes, again, don't understand why that underrun is not then redirected to services.
Got it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's put at least a discussion item in FNA and we can talk it. And at least make sure you have a council position and the rest of the council's work. But let's start with a position statement. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, and with that, we'll move on to review of draft council agenda. All right. Starting at 6 PM, we're gonna have a roundtable executive session. Still needed?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we'll continue on to regular agenda at 7 PM, call to order, pledge of allegiance, agenda approval. And we'll have presentation of Snoqualmie Valley Mobility Coalition.
Yes.
And we'll have proclamation 25-15 week without driving. And then public comments, consent agenda is approve the council meeting minutes and approve the claims report. And committee reports will have agenda bill and public safety agenda bill 2576, Washington Traffic Safety Commission interagency agreement.
Chair,
Yeah,
that was moved to or approved for consent.
Okay. All right, see no reason to object to what the committee wants. All right, we'll move that one up under consent. Community development, affordable workforce, housing development. Okay, you gave me a noun. What's the verb that goes with that? I'm just I'm looking for a noun verb.
Yeah, what are we doing with it?
It's to declare the responses to the RFQ non-responsive.
Okay. Thought that's what it was, but. All right, and that's community development.
Actually, Chair,
Yes,
we add something about call it responsive to RFQ or something like that.
Yeah, we'll massage the title.
So otherwise it just looks like a general discussion about.
Well, there
affordable
will be
housing.
proposed action, so it would be moved to declare the responses to.
Okay,
whatever The proposed motion is going to be, will be on the agenda.
okay.
okay, that makes sense. I'm good with that then.
All right, and then we'll do Parks and Public Works. We have the River Trail Northwest Sandy Cove construction and the Business Park Pump Station Capacity Study. Expect discussion around that one. F&A, we have resolution authorizing 0.1% sales tax use criminal justice proposal. And we'll discuss exactly how far we're gonna take that. With that, I'll include the agenda. We'll go to mayor's report. Put under F&A,
Yep.
the discussion on the opioid. She'll tell you the words. But please note, let's have a discussion on the opioid, King County retention of unspent funds. All right, reports, mayor's reports, commission committee liaison reports, department reports, standing agenda. And at this stage, no placeholder for executive session at the end?
Yes,
We
there
need
will
one.
be, yeah.
Okay. Any other revisions or changes? Any objections to the agenda as discussed with modifications? All right, let's proceed forward with that agenda. Thank you. Any other items come before the committee tonight? And he's got his hand up. Yes, sir.
Just want to introduce Robert Thrall. He's the new assistant to the city attorney and the assistant city clerk. So he has come back for almost 3 weeks now. So
3 weeks.
that's always a good sign.
Starting to get the hang of things.
Sounds good.
Glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, any other items? Drew's looking at me under his eyebrows. I didn't see any movement. All right, lesser objections, we're adjourned.